Hey everyone, Angelo here, Hollywood filmmaker, greatest screenwriter in the history of the world, recovering homeless guy. And I'm thinking about a single family home I was in yesterday. I went to a little house party, and I've lived in apartments for years. So being at this single family detached home for the party, it was a beautiful place, beautiful backyard, well designed, like nice architecture to it. And it's for some people. Some people want that. I believe it's a perfectly reasonable thing to have. What I don't think is reasonable is how we've created zoning laws and mandated that this is the only type of housing you can build in much of America. And if you're familiar with urbanism at all and the discussion around more dense housing, better land use, transit-oriented development, or TOD, you'll sort of know what I'm getting at, which is, for me anyways, it evoked just how lonely I was living in houses like this. Both in the house I grew up in, it was just stark seeing in this house. And again, it's not putting down the house itself or like wanting to have a house like that. It's your choice of whether you want one or not, or at least I should say it should be your choice. For much of us, it's not really much of a choice when that's the majority of housing available. Anyways, so for me, I just thought, man, it's lonely being here. Like, I can just feel that, there aren't people going around here. This is a suburban neighborhood. It's like separate from the city. And again, for those who want that, that's fine. But we've created this unsustainable system where the suburbs are out of the city. The urban cores are where all the businesses and jobs are. Utilities have to be built further and further out. Can't really afford to do that. Not can't really, we just can't. And as a result, it's the urban cores that are the tax base that are subsidizing the suburbs and the people who leave the cities. And also it's a matter of equity. Why were the suburbs built? So white people could leave the city and people of color could have their communities destroyed, bulldozed to build freeways so the people in the suburbs can get to the city for their jobs. And those who remain in the cities, their neighborhoods are disinvested in, over-policed, all kinds of problems. I have a freeway above me right now. So anyways, I'm getting distracted from my point. I just thought it was so lonely being there, and I've spent so much of my life in homes like that where it was lonely, and I didn't understand that. It was in part due to the architecture. You can be lonely anywhere. But I've been in single family detached homes that I thought were beautiful too, and I loved it, and I could feel a community there. Like, I'll go there for parties typically. And I was just thinking, okay, what kind of neighborhood do you want to live in? Like, what principles are we building our cities around? I'm here in a neighborhood. I can hear all this freeway traffic behind me. Does this make sense? These people are not coming to our neighborhood, and it's not about inside or outside in the neighborhood. I'm saying it's poor design when you don't have viable ways of getting around that don't involve this. You look up Segregation by Design. It's a website that discusses all this stuff. How in this region, you can look up what happened in the neighborhood of Sugar Hill. Now it's called, I think, West Adams. It was the wealthiest black community. I forget what it was, like wealthiest in the state. I can't remember. Or wealthiest in the city. I don't remember exactly. But it was essentially destroyed, bulldozed for a freeway. Oh, funny. Which neighborhoods get destroyed and which don't? And then it's easy to look at this picturesque view of white people in the suburbs and say, oh, look, they were responsible. They saved their money. And look at poor people meaning often black and brown people in the inner cities, and say, look, they're irresponsible with their money. Well, really, what did someone do that's irresponsible that got 1,000 or more homes bulldozed to build a highway that's against segregation by design? There's so many equity issues involved. So it's not just purely material poverty, it's the pollution that happens as a result. Lowered property values, higher childhood asthma rates, cancer rates, cardiovascular disease when you live near sources of emissions like this. More desolate neighborhoods, fewer job centers, and it's a whole other issue of the quality of jobs that there are. And it creates this picture that's very easy to mistake for just something you can ascribe to, oh, that's personal responsibility. You should make money to live somewhere else. Well, why is this not the somewhere else? Why is this not the place to be? It's because of things like segregation by design, by the auto industry, by the oil industry. So what kind of neighborhood do you want to live in? Do you want a neighborhood with nice spacious sidewalks like this that are peaceful? Or do you want one with a freeway cutting through it? This sidewalk, by the way, only goes a few feet and then it narrows here. How exactly, on a sidewalk this narrow, do people walking dogs pass each other? Well, they have to step up onto the grass. Or two people walking side by side and another two people. Or here, I forget who said this. It's a great and this is a nice sidewalk for this area. I just passed by some that are completely like impassable, if not like virtually impassable by wheelchair. I should have filmed that, because literally the sidewalk goes up like sharply like 1.5 feet in a few places because tree roots are underneath it. Somebody said sidewalks should be wide enough for two people on wheelchairs to be able to cross each other on them. I'm like, that shows care, equity, and concern for everyone here. Because who is a person in a wheelchair? Well, it's anyone. It could be anybody. It's not necessarily someone who's confined 100% to a wheelchair. It's not necessarily someone who's been in one their whole life. It's something like a condition of our bodies that, you know, we have frailties, we have illnesses, injuries. In high-speed networks, meaning like arterial roads, like this one next to me, so hugely overbuilt for most of the day, but what do? We prioritize vehicle traffic. And so what's that mean? It means you need a vehicle to get around, because the bus is not that viable. Metro is not that viable, here in LA at least. In much of the world it is. Bus drivers, metro operators are not paid enough. Why? The metro system's not funded enough. Why? We as a people, as a collective, fundamentally on some level, don't care enough. We think, oh, it's there because you're poor, because you're unfortunate enough not to have a car. Well, if the 750,000 or so trips made a day on the metro system and public transportation, here in LA, weren't made by public transportation, would you all prefer those 750,000 trips be made by car? So another 750,000 trips by car in Southern California. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. So we have an unworkable system. What am I talking about here? I want to get specific. Just basic healthy communities, happy communities. I'm not talking some deep, noble wisdom or something. I'm just talking about what I've learned and experienced having lived in Virginia and now LA, and having driven cars for many years, for like 10 years or more, and gotten plenty of rides in cars even before I was driving. and just seen things differently now, and learned about the benefits of transit and how we didn't become a car culture just because like it was like just the consensus of everyone. It was finessed. It was, you could really just essentially call it a con on all of us, like a con game, tricking us into think cars are independence when they're a burden, they're dangerous, they're a major contributor to climate change. The short-term health outcomes are bad. Long-term health outcomes are going to be disastrous along with climate change. They get people needlessly killed. It's stressful. It's a financial burden. It's funny how people, a lot of like drivers who specifically do not want more transit or more bus lanes, metros coming through their neighborhood, they argue a few things. One, a lot of times they're incredibly racist, but two, because they don't want people without their means, who have we made without means? It's not an accident. Made a lot of brown and black people, immigrants, LGBTQ people poor. They don't want those people to be able to come through their neighborhoods on transit, let alone be able to afford to live in their neighborhoods. Oh, I could have crossed. So, we look at this as like just normal. When I was talking to a guy yesterday at this party, he said how he studies transportation, or really like climate change, and he went to, I forget the whole story. He had a very interesting story. He went to Japan for a while, and I guess studied there and saw their transit system and their streets that are more made for people. We can't understand streets as for pedestrians and for everybody. We only think of streets as having lane markings and for cars to go through. And how that was so, inspiring, informative, and great, and so much more pleasant than this noise. That's not even really hearing the engine of the car. That's just the tires and the wind against the car. Imagine if we had this much infrastructure built out here, like with all these major roads in LA. You can name so many, but just off the top of my head, Venice Boulevard, Sepulveda, Pico, Olympic, Sawtelle, La Cienega, Western, Wilshire. Can I think of others? And then the freeways, the 405, the 10, the 101. I think that is that one. I have not driven on freeways in so long. I can't even think of them. And how much of our infrastructure is dedicated to maintaining this infrastructure. So places like auto body shops, car dealerships, parking lots, parking. What if we built a parking lot and nobody parked in it? I thought of that saying because I was like, well, somebody said, what if they started a war but nobody showed up? What if we had streets and no one drove on them? And here's a point I've thought about so much, because I'm like, putting pressure on leadership and getting our neighbors to want to make for more transit-oriented development and more transit, that's a long-term thing. What's something immediate we can do that would fundamentally transform that calculation of whether we should have narrower streets, people-friendly streets, land use that puts businesses in neighborhoods and gives us those third places, like free places to be at or low cost, where we can just be ourselves, where we can talk to people, where we can read, we can enjoy ourselves, we can go whatever. Ride bikes, play some kind of sport, play soccer, play baseball, read, write, do group activities, whatever, group yoga, or just walk. What's something that we could do that would sort of change that calculation, that would also be immediately beneficial for us, impact us very positively, and would not cost us, would actually save us a ton of money? What would that thing be? That thing would be if a bunch of us would decide to start making trips on foot, by bike, by public transportation, rather than by car. That should have been me. I was making so many trips, 2 miles, 3 miles, with my car, just because I thought, well, that's the way to get around. And if you look at the streets, that makes sense. That's the way to get around. The streets are too wide to safely bike on in a lot of areas. There aren't any bike lanes on those wide streets. The buses don't run often enough. I wasn't even aware there was a metro station in my neighborhood for like 6 months when I lived in Koreatown. So what can we do that would immediately change the calculation of, like, well, should we expand a highway? Should we change the streets to be more pedestrian, people friendly? What's that one thing we can do? What if just half the city gave up their cars, sold their cars, and started riding bikes? I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen. I'm just saying, just as a thought, what if it did? Well, just play out that thought, that image. Well, obviously, that would be shocking. That would be a big news story. It would save us a ton of money. Car dealerships and mechanic shops would be very upset. We would save a ton of money on insurance. We would be healthier. And we wouldn't have to wait for the infrastructure, because the streets would be so much safer without more cars. And there would be so many fewer drivers. People would be able to drive without much traffic. Now, there's a downside to that too, that specific scenario, which is when there's less traffic, what we have found, like in the pandemic, is people drive a lot more fast, or a lot faster, a lot more fastly. People drive a lot faster, so the roads can be even deadlier when there's less traffic. So it's kind of better to bike with a lot of traffic if it's slow, because then you can just filter through and beat the traffic. So there's an irony to that. But broadly speaking, what happens if half of LA all of a sudden just ditch their cars? And let's not even go that far and say, okay, ditching your cars, that's the thought experiment, because that obviously is a drastic choice. And certain trips, here's the thing, I'm not against cars. If everybody had their own personal train, obviously I support trains, but if everyone had their own personal train, or every block had a train stop, I'm like, okay, I would be like, okay, yeah, I support trains, but this is not the appropriate use for trains. Like, trains should be more for getting large groups of people to certain like destinations, and it should be easy once you get off the train to get somewhere. That first mile, last mile problem. Deliveries, emergency services, there are lots of reasons to have a car. If you just like having a car, I think you should be able to have a car. But we should make it so if you like having a car, you can get a car. Not you have to get one. You have to have this financial burden, this albatross around your neck, where you have a job essentially to pay for your car and your housing, a whole separate topic that's also made exacerbated by the land use, the distance between homes, and the commodification of housing. You're working a job to pay for your car, but you need your car to get to your job. It's a vicious cycle. It's a miserable experience, living that life, grinding your existence away for that. So again, what happens if half the city just not even gave up their cars, just made 1 or 2 trips a week without their car? By biking, by walking, public transportation. All of a sudden, that would have a huge effect on traffic. And that serves as a signal to every political leader that you have a huge constituency that wants safer streets, where it wouldn't even be a dilemma for them in saying like, oh, we need to keep all this parking. We can't give up parking for people who ride bikes and have bike lanes. Well, if we just had streets that were largely free of cars because people didn't want to drive and they didn't have to drive. Like, think about it. You think I'm having a pleasant time listening to all this goddamn fucking traffic? 3 cars, and that's noisy and stressful. And also I'm breathing in emissions, probably the particulates that are kicked up by the tires on the road. Huge amounts of microplastics get in our water and our oceans from tires on the street. Cars wear down the roads so quickly compared to cyclists. We all pay for taxes that go toward road maintenance, and yet it's drivers who disproportionately use the roads and wear them out and are not paying anywhere near the amount that they're tearing them up compared to pedestrians. Like, yeah, me walking here wears down this sidewalk a little bit. I suppose a few 100,000 trips on it, you'd start to see some wear on the sidewalk. Depends if I, did my business in the bathroom that morning. If I left my leavings in there, that's a little extra weight. So what happens if we do it? Like, let's do that. What I'm saying is, let's just start doing that. Let's try and make trips without our cars so much. I think cars can be great. A good car, like a good car, is a beautiful piece of machinery. I absolutely believe that. I just think it should, first of all, a lot of cars are crappy, over-engineered pieces of junk. Second of all, people shouldn't have to drive cars to be able to get around. Think about it, man. Put a little gift off here. So you shouldn't, and I shouldn't have to. All this infrastructure for cars, a little car lot here. Those are some nice cars. I like those. Car shop here. Are these pleasant, like, community centers for us? Or are these like burdens on us? So I'm asking you all watching. Hold on, I gotta zip up my backpack. Can you make just one trip a week without your car? Just walk somewhere. If you can, whatever your situation is. And I'm saying if you can. Man, it's so noisy here. Yeah, obviously, if you live in a remote area where there are no sidewalks and the only roads are narrow, high speed through the woods, I would tell you not to walk. That's dangerous. Because of the high speed traffic and lack of pedestrian infrastructure. Do not bike there. You can always make a video yourself talking about, why can't I walk here? You don't even have to advocate for it. Just say, like, what do you all think? Like, should there be another way of getting around here? Or should we have different land use where I don't have to go down a distant stretch of road to get my groceries? Like, why are the neighborhoods in one place and the stores in another in much of the country? Because that is not the case around the world. It's great when you live somewhere and you can walk out your door and within a few minutes, if that, have shops around. When I was in Koreatown, there were dozens and dozens of shops on my block because we had dense housing, we had mixed use buildings, and we had a shopping center right there on my neighborhood, on my block. It was awesome. A dry cleaner, we had multiple convenience stores. You know, shop owners, one of them kind of an asshole, that always acted like I was a thief. But another one, they were super cool. It was a little like a Mexican market. Man, they were super cool to me. They knew my face. I was in there a lot. I miss it so much. It was awesome being there. It was a little, and it was constantly expanding. I'm like, how much nicer to shop here than shop at Ralph's or some other big chain grocery store? Yeah, the small shop didn't have all the ingredients I wanted, but they had great stuff, and I liked that. Yeah, who knows whatever exploitation was going on there, whatever company owned them, or the products that were on their shelves. I know Goya is on their shelves, and the guy who runs that is a Trump-loving asshole. And right now, the national politics seem apocalyptic, and international. But think about that. That's something you can do, that you can enjoy, that you can do as a community. You can do with people you know. You can change your neighborhood by reducing traffic, save yourself money, and improve your health, and give yourself a little mental boost, like a psychological boost, by walking, by riding a bike. Riding a bike is a joy. And just by saving money. Do that. What happens if we all start doing that more and more, and we don't have to think about it as a big plan? It's just like, oh, I'm going to just do it for one trip. Then next time you're like, oh, I want to do it for this one too. Maybe you don't. But if you keep doing that, what happens? Now we have a mass movement that is just people, enjoying their lives, feeling joy, not having these massive, god-awful, wasteful streets. I'll try and take a picture. Hope I got that. I want to take a little picture for the thumbnail. Out in the heat without much tree shade. What kind of neighborhood do you want to live in? Or would you rather have pedestrianized streets like this? Where you can just be. Still hear the traffic behind me, but it's starting to fade a little bit. What's more pleasant looking? What's more inviting? That street I was on, or this? Oh, I'll take a picture of this too. Let me get even a wider shot. Oh no, this is better. Cool. Did I get that? Sorry, y'all. I'm not going to edit this. Just... Okay. Enough of that. How nice it is to be in the shade here. You have right up there here to walk, to just be. Benches. How inviting is that? Tables. Temperature's cool. Shops here. Now granted, shops like that probably expensive. How beautiful is that? Doesn't run nearly often enough. What kind of neighborhood do you want? Do you notice the contrast? Oh, I'll take a screenshot of this. This is even better. I mean, yeah, a picture of this. Okay. Or do you prefer that asphalt hellscape I was on? Where, yeah, driving, you can drive through here. Drive through there. Would you want to add cars here? If you're hanging out here, do you think, oh, what we need is some traffic going through here? Bikes, by all means. Rollerblades, skateboards, longboards, tricycles, recumbent bikes, wheelchairs, e-bikes, absolutely. Or would you prefer that noisy street I was on? So think about it and make a change if you want. Just if you don't want to buy a bike too, well, see if you can get a cheap used bike or a free donated bike. But also, if your city has a bike share system, like here in LA we have Metro Bike Share. Other cities have, New York I guess has like a city bike, or Citibank, I guess they do like a bike share program. I think, if that's right. Lots of cities around the world do it. See if you can check out, get the app, and check out a bike. Around here in LA, it's $1.75 for a 30-minute bike ride, and they just charge more for every 30 minutes. Or you can get a monthly pass or annual pass, and they offer huge discounts if you watch for them once in a while. So that way you don't have to buy a bike, you can just try it and see for yourself. All right, everyone, that's my message. Let's make the change ourselves. Let's not wait for the infrastructure. Let's all get out of our cars and show our cities and our neighbors and our leadership that we demand safer, healthier, happier streets. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. Bye.